You're right, dude, bro. It is 401. We are slackers, but hey, we're here. Welcome into the latest Trade to Black podcast presented by Dutchie. I'm your host, Shad Dales. Big show here today. One of the top cannabis attorneys returns to Trade to Black. That's Eric Berlin. We're going to talk about some of the stuff that Senator Rand Paul said last week about how there's still real concern. We could see a nationwide ban on hemp products. We'll get his take from a legality standpoint on what this could mean, if lawsuits could happen, if this comes in to law. Plus, Marc Cohodes. He is obviously, no one needs any introduction as far as Mark. He is big name, big voice, former hedge fund manager and short seller. He's going to give his take. I know he's been very vocal about his trip earlier this month to Washington, D.C., where he met with Homeland Security and Treasury. And again, continues to push the narrative that descheduling is the route to go. So we're going to get an idea of what we think right now. There's no news right now for the Trump administration, what this means timeline-wise, and get his take on everything. So buckle in. We got a great show here on a Wednesday, Trade to Black, presented by Dutchie. Let's welcome in AV. Good to see you, sir. And got a lot of energy here today. There's got two great guests coming up.
Yeah, it'll be a good show. It was a good day today in the market. I want to also caution everybody that while the price action was green, the volume was
pretty low,
very low. They could pull back quite easily on a move. But there's some stability. There's green on the tape, and it's not going to diminish a little win. So while I would enjoy it, if I was everybody, I would very, very much so keep in mind that it was on low volume, and I don't think we're going to see high volume in either direction until there is some sort of certainty moving forward.
Speaking of green, great question here by Irish. What if question, if they ban hemp, do cannabis stocks go up? It's a very good question. Very good question.
I don't think so.
No?
I do think that it will impact MSOs and state-run cannabis businesses, not just MSOs, in a positive manner moving forward. Trent anecdotally was talking about one of their Virginia stores. It's been just trending to the upside since they've been cracking down on hemp and smoke shops in the surrounding area. I think you would see an uptick in Florida. I think you'd see an uptick in heavy markets that have both currently right now. But as far as stocks going up, you're not going to see MSOs go up 50% in a day like you would on a regulatory headline if they ban hemp. Because the fact of the matter is, if they ban hemp, a lot of that business is going to go back to the black market.
Yes.
It's not going to come back into the legal channels. I think some of it will to a certain degree, but you're not going to see this just flooding of billions of dollars of revenue coming straight back into the legal market.
I think you could definitely see a short-term rally when you look at just the headlines. But to your point, Anthony, and you look a little bit further, it will definitely push consumers back to the black illicit market for sure.
I don't think they should ban hemp at all.
I don't either. I don't think that's where we want to go with this. It's like hemp's here,
form of prohibition
here. It's not about coming here. It's about going up here. We need change, and I don't mean change in a negative way, in a positive way. So with that, lots to talk about. Let's get into our latest TDR Trade to Black podcast presented by Dutchie, and welcome in one of the top cannabis attorneys in America from Dentons, Eric Berlin, back to the podcast. Good day, sir, and great to see you.
Good day, and great to see both of you. And I heard those comments, and Anthony, I agree with that assessment 100% as to what happens when or if hemp were to go away.
Yes.
So I think that all has to be part of the equation that we look at. But good to talk to you. I'm sorry, I was technologically challenged at the beginning, so I grabbed my headphones. So
it's all good.
Not the usual look, but I can hear you loud and clear.
Well,
I'm happy to discuss this with you today.
Yeah, I'm getting some pushback here today where I usually wear a blazer with a hoodie, but I thought Eric's on, I got to bring in the collared shirt. But judging by the audience, they're like, you should have stuck to the hoodie. But regardless, gotta look the part when we have you on. So look, I don't know if you saw our interview last week with Senator Rand Paul. He made it clear that there's some real concern hemp products could face a nationwide ban, suggesting we could see an outcome within the next week to 2 weeks. He said 2 to 3 weeks, but it's been a week since then. So Eric, when you go back to 2018, when Mitch McConnell helped write the Farm Bill, but by many accounts, he didn't really understand how wide open the definition, I think, hemp really was. So now that we're here in 2025, it feels like we could be making the same mistakes all over again, except this time the risk actually is wiping out not just intoxicating hemp, but also legitimate CBD wellness and hemp beverage products. So do you see these proposals as a case of Congress once again overcorrecting, trying to shut down bad actors, but in the process, in a lot of ways destroying a legitimate industry or sector right now?
I think that's a valid way of looking at it. Going back to your point, this is what happens when guys who don't understand the plant try to legislate around it,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Or the science or anything like that, right? And that's kind of the complication. And in many ways, we're still there. I mean, there's more knowledge and they're using more knowledge, but the proposals are problematic, not just in terms of being an overreaction. And I think the result of which would be, as Anthony said, more folks go into the illicit market. But, it's another example of kind of, to misuse the phrase, don't fool with Mother Nature, going back to that point of not understanding. I mean, what does a quantifiable amount mean, right? I mean, a lot of these problems that we've had or confusion that we've had arise from lack of clear definitions. So I do think that's true. And I think that I would counsel folks just to take a step back, right? And think about, where are we trying to go and where are we inevitably going? And we're inevitably headed toward a direction of what my goal was, and I hope I'm not being overly optimistic, but eventually getting to safe, legal, affordable access to cannabis and cannabinoids. Mm-hmm. And hemp and what went onto the market was a great advance in terms of accessibility and legal, although there have been significant safety issues around it. And I say safety not in the sense that like, this is killing people, we need to prohibit it, but that it's different than how it started in terms of the products going to market, and we want to understand that better. So I think in terms of getting a safe, legal, affordable access for, and I use cannabis whole, I use cannabis sativa L, including hemp, not distinguishing hemp. But for all of this, we want to prioritize consumer safety, right? And when we talk about all these molecules, we want to back up and say, what are we trying to accomplish here? Well, we're trying to prevent youth access. And when I say that, I want to make clear, I'm not talking about criminalizing youth access. I'm talking about, there are lots of folks that cannabis can help. There are lots of folks who it's sort of neutral to, and there's some folks that best science shows maybe it shouldn't be used by them. And kids are in that category, and they often, the view is don't have the maturity to determine when to use something, when not. And I think the general consensus is we ought to prioritize consumer safety. We ought to prioritize preventing youth access. We ought to have some level of consistency in safety standards, testing and quality control standards, and that there ought to be still some deference left in the states to all of this, right? And you don't hear me talk about anything about prohibiting, right? I mean, those I think should be our goals. And then you have certain questions as to how do we implement this? So, I'll just say this, I skipped a step, right? The step I skipped is, should any of this be legal? And I think that discussion, we're beyond that. And the notion that it should all just be criminalized and anyone who wants this should go entirely to the dirty illicit market. I mean, that's just not where the country is right now. So I'm a little bit in this conversation skipping the step and assuming that we'll get to where such a large majority of folks want to get. And when they talk about that, they're not talking about, oh, I only want hemp drinks, I don't think anything else should be legal. I mean, that's kind of silly. So I think what the next step you get in regulation is, what are we going to regulate? Are we going to regulate the source material, the plant itself? Are we going to regulate work in progress? Are we going to regulate the final product? Most of the discussion that's occurred is about the final product. Right? What can and can't be in the final product. So we ought to be cognizant that there are all these different parts of this. And when we talk about going back to McConnell and then the discussion with Rand Paul. So I take Senator McConnell at his word that he did not intend to legalize this level of Delta 9 THC when he set out to legalize hemp, that his intent was more for industrial hemp and CBD and things like CBD, but he didn't intend to legalize intoxicating products. You know, that's fine, but we're here. And going back to Anthony's point, like all of this just goes back to the illicit market. Yeah. And so Senator Paul and others are saying it's too late to stick this back in the bottle. We ought to be talking about what we're regulating and how we're regulating it. And the notion that if you have hemp that's truly being grown for industrial purposes, hempcrete, or things like that, right? You don't necessarily need the kind of testing of a DEA lab to test for different levels of different THCs, right? So we ought to be thinking about how is this going to be used when we're setting up regulations.
Yeah.
And industrial hemp ought to be tested in different ways than hemp for human consumption is. And then when you get into how we're measuring whether it's intoxicating or not, I see a lot of, well, I say this in the knowledge that it's hard to get one's arms around this, but by the legislators, I see a lot of fumbling around, right? I mean, with a lack of clear understanding of how are these products even getting on the market. Maybe it's worth me explaining. I don't know if your audience completely understands how you get from hemp to a THC drink, but it's often through chemical conversions that are happening. Not always, but often. So how are we regulating the plant? How are we regulating the extract? How are we regulating work in progress, as has been referred to, or even if we're going to regulate work in progress? And how are we going to regulate the inputs into the products and the products themselves? And right now, there's not really that much discussion of all those things and how to make it work. There's the discussion of you can grow hemp, and then kind of like what should be allowed in these products. And this, quite frankly, reaction to intoxicating products on the market. And the reaction is only to seeing the intoxicating products on the market, right? Yeah. I mean, we've had marijuana for decades.
Yeah.
Literally like decades upon decades. And it's just people reacting to seeing it. So I want to go back to Anthony's point. If we just make it go away off the shelves, all you're doing is not regulating at all and not doing a darn thing to prevent youth access or for consumer safety, or even to go back to mine, which is safe, legal, affordable access. So we're thinking about like all these things, and then there are discussions of the chemical conversions. It doesn't matter in the end product if the THC is converted from CBD. I mean, in some ways, well, like in some ways it matters, in some ways it doesn't matter. It depends from whose perspective and what you're looking at. In terms of that final molecule, Anthony, it is slightly different. There are phytochemical traces that has been converted, and we don't know if some of those phytochemical traces have implications, but assuming they don't, underneath it's Delta 9 THC. It's the same molecule. So the consumer doesn't really care. I mean, why would the consumer care, other than if it's coming from hemp through a chemical conversion, it's going to be less expensive. But then you go to the THC, you're creating minor cannabinoids in greater quantity. So you have Delta 8, which is present in marijuana and hemp, but in very small quantities. Then you get to conversion of chemicals that are cannabinoids, but not naturally present in most cases. That's another area, right? And then you get to like, can you create? Yeah, that's a good example. Or I mean, there are many, and I don't want to get into, I don't want chemists in the audience to get all upset that I misstated. But the point being that there are these different categories, and we need some help figuring out what we're comfortable going to market, right? And I think it's safe to say that the current model of just, and we're getting toward greater regulation, but the model of just like throw out any cannabinoids you want, make them however you want, market them however you want, is not really a good way to go to market, and it is not what a majority of our citizens want. Right? They want some regulation. Even if you're running a business, you want some regulation, because it's very difficult to even make money in a free-for-all, in a race to the bottom, when it's like, the 7-gram vape of a mixture of cannabinoids of, Hulk Hogan on it. I mean, like, just, like,
correct. That's the problem.
With the vape leaching chemicals and chemicals in there. Like, I'm not saying, please don't understand me to say that every single hemp product is dangerous or not safe. That's not at all what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is there are products that are, because of the lack of regulations,
absolutely,
they're hurting folks. So I just think we need a good discussion on that. And I think we need a good discussion on labeling, testing, quality control. And so if you step back, I don't think it's that complicated, right? I mean, I just said it. We need the emphasis on consumer safety. So transparency.
Well, there's a good point here. Like, one of our viewers walks into a gas station in America, Dank Informer, walk into a gas station in America, it's everywhere. It's like 50% of the hemp market right now. Do you agree with that?
What's the question? I'm sorry.
So walk into any gas station in America, it's everywhere. It's like 50% of the hemp market right now.
And for context, Eric, he's referring to synthetics.
Yeah.
Which is it's the main problem. I mean, we had Adam Terry from Cantrip on a while back, and he was talking about the chemical conversion process and going to HHC, THCP, these orders of magnitude stronger substances that are derived from chemical conversion. There's free radicals, heavy metals. There's byproducts that find their way into these products via the synthesis process that they're using, and that's the problem, because we completely lack regulation, completely. But one of my main thoughts or main questions that I had for you is, we have the appropriations language right now, where we have Senator Paul on one side, McConnell on the other. Even if that appropriations language passes, does it have standing as long as the definition of the Farm Bill stays the way it is right now?
Well,
it's a good question.
I want to make sure I understand that question. Say it again, because I do want to answer.
So we have the appropriations language going through right now that could ban hemp. But from my understanding, that language doesn't do anything to the Farm Bill. The definition of hemp via the Farm Bill stays intact. Would that if it was to be legally challenged, would you be able to potentially, and this might be too detailed to answer on the fly, but would you be able to use as precedent that until the definition in the Farm Bill is changed, none of this language really holds water as far as regulation? Well,
I don't want to preclude that argument. But it doesn't occur to me right away, right? And so my thought is more that, first of all, the language that's being thrown around could either be in appropriations or the Farm Bill, right? Correct. And it could be both, right? Okay. I mean, it could be one and it could be then the other. So I don't necessarily think that's a safe assumption, but I also think that it's intended to override that definition, because that definition still applies to the plant, right? And it's still going to be within 30 days pre-harvest. It has to test for under 0.3% delta-9 THC plus 87.7% of delta-9 THCA. That's going to remain the same, and they're not changing that. What this change would be is basically what can go into a product. And I do think it's within their authority to add on and say, okay, we've legalized hemp, it can be produced, but in terms of what can be sold for human consumption, I mean, my initial reaction is I think they can do that, and they're probably drafting to be able to do that. And I don't want to preclude any legal argument or a challenge, but that would be my assumption.
Okay, makes sense.
So if they move to total or no quantifiable THC, like, we're going to see a lot of lawsuits here. Do you think the courts would be sympathetic to like some of the industry challenges here, or is there an area where judges are more likely to defer to Congress and the federal agencies? Like how, like I would assume that you're going to see a lot of lawsuits that take place here, if indeed this passes.
So there are a few things to talk about there. There's the language in there that has a lot of ambiguity, right? And so naturally we would see some lawsuits around the ambiguity and around how regulations were interpreted around that ambiguity. So I think there would be lawsuits. Now I have to say, like the folks who would be in many ways most affected, I mean, everyone would be affected, but the folks who would be more inclined to fight that would be the folks who have like full spectrum hemp products. Correct. Because they would actually be affected, and the language, the interpretation of that language could be material to their sales. The company that's out there selling 10 milligram drinks, like, I'm not sure where they go, because there is no interpretation of, no quantifiable amount that would let them put their products back on the market. Correct. And so I said a couple of things. The other thing I want to turn to is the bill from Representative Griffith, the Virginia Republican representative. And first of all, I want to mention that my wonderful colleagues, Joanne Caceres and Lauren Estevez, published an article in Marijuana Moment on these provisions and on the different interpretations. And I encourage folks to read that as well, because I think they did a good job on that. But they also described Griffith's bill. And Griffith's bill, everyone's like, read it as like, oh, great. It's not like zero THC. But you actually look at it, and it's such low levels of THC that it would bar almost all of the products that are on the market that are considered intoxicating, or anything that people buy other than that are like purely full spectrum kind of products used for medicinal purposes. So even though that has some rational, like, we're going to ask the FDA to determine this, if the FDA doesn't determine it, we'll allow this much for non-intoxicating, and we'll allow, like, what is it, 0.2 milligrams? Yeah. Which is well, that might be able to get, someone who's never had cannabis high. It's it wouldn't work for me, and wouldn't work for most people. So it really is not. It's designed to eliminate that part of the market. I suspect that Senator Paul would not allow that to happen as well. And I don't necessarily think we're anticipating the Senate falling to greater Republican control. So I guess I go back to this point that I want to make also. Like, we're talking about this kind of prohibitionist nihilist language in the bill, and Rand Paul saying, I'm not going to allow that to happen. And you have McConnell, who is fighting for it. But I have trouble understanding why what will happen at the federal level will be any different than Texas.
Yeah.
Like, I think we're pretty clear now that President Trump is running the federal government.
Just a tad.
And even to the extent that, I don't want to go too far. My understanding is that had some play in Texas, right? And so if that's what the White House wants, I don't know why the same thing wouldn't happen here, right? And it's not like
that's
Trump, quite frank, it's not like President Trump cares much at all what Senator McConnell. I was saying, excuse me, my language, not to both of you, that I don't think that the president cares much about, that McConnell wants to clean up this that he created. So I and then you get into like, well, what does that mean? And you had the initial question, well, like, if that would happen, would all the marijuana stock go up drastically in a day? Well, maybe. I'm not here to second guess the markets, but I, for a while, have been suggesting to those companies in one form or another that this represents as much of an opportunity as it does a threat. And when I say this, let me be clear about this.
Yeah.
I mean what could be reasonably considered legitimate legal hemp products. I generally do not include high THCA products in that mix. I think most of the THCA flower is not properly measuring THCA, the post decarboxylation pre-harvest. So I can and I don't want to get hate mail, but I consider most of that on the market not Farm Bill compliant, as they say.
Correct.
So if you're talking about really like clarity of allowing these products, it's a clear opportunity for many of those companies. And in case we had any doubt about it, look what's happening in the market. And I'm hesitant to name any of them because they're my clients and I don't want to go one way or another or call favorites, but like most of those big MSOs you talk about, one way or another, are going to market with some hemp products.
Correct.
And when we look at how they're used, if you have truly daily cannabis users are not a ton reaching for beverages, for example, right? Yeah. It's more folks who are, have a few drinks a week, and that's what they're choosing. They are substituting it for the beer they would normally have, right? And so it's important to look at where market is moving on this, right?
Yeah,
correct.
And so if we said, okay, THCA flower is not legal, Texas is banning vapes. I'm not suggesting what should happen here. I think vapes is a very good way of using cannabis, but to the extent that gets banned, as much as we pass a hemp store every time you're driving to a dispensary, if those products were eliminated, there would not be that much cannibalization out of the dispensaries because the dispensaries aren't selling that many drinks to begin with.
Agreed.
So the battle then becomes a little bit over edibles, and
which is huge because for me, I don't go to the dispensary to buy gummies anymore. I buy the hemp derivative ones from all the major brands that I'd be buying in the dispensaries anyway. I pay with a credit card online. They show up at my house and it's the exact same product.
But here's the deal. So I understand that is, I'm not denying that taking some margin or some sales from the dispensaries. But if there's clarity that is legal and there's a legal pathway for it, that means that those dispensaries, maybe not that all the dispensaries. I understand if you just own a dispensary and you're not owning any of the brands or anything like that, there are a ton of market pressures on you right now.
Yeah.
I mean, there are a lot. Okay. And I understand that this would be another one, but I'm thinking in a more holistic fashion. Right. And I'm thinking about how cannabis gets sold in the country. And I'm extremely grateful that we have set up this dispensary model and those who are supporting it. And I'm grateful that I, in Illinois, can go buy legal tested cannabis. But no one promised that would be the way the cannabis would be sold forever. Correct. And quite frankly, you're buying it direct to consumer. You're just having it sent to you. Right. I mean, who wouldn't want to do that? I mean, that's the bottom line. Like, would you rather do that and get online and do it? Or would you rather go and wait in line at the dispensary and show your card a whole bunch of times?
Yeah.
So, let me say this. I don't think that either model necessarily has to be static. I think there should be greater age gating around purchasing products online. And I do not think we need the level of security and diversion control in our dispensaries that we have. It's a waste of money and time.
Yes.
And we don't need to make sure that state regulated, taxed, more expensive and tested cannabis is not leaking to the illicit market. That was a fool's errand to begin with, and it remains one in 2025.
Don't you think it would just be easier and make common sense to bring parity towards the two? with hemp
Well, I'd like
and
to see some
marijuana?
level of parity. Exactly.
Yeah.
That is exactly what I'm saying. I would like to see, first of all, I understand that plants could be grown differently. I mean, I'm not trying to say necessarily a one plant solution, but certainly in terms of how products go to consumers.
Mhm.
And I think what we have shown is, like, if we take the best of all these worlds, right? What do consumers want? Consumers want they want what I just said at the beginning: safe, legal, affordable access, right?
Mhm.
And I think by this point we know what we mean by that. That's what consumers want. It's what
Correct.
consumers are going to get at the end of the day, because we live in the United States of America and we live with liberty and freedom, and that's where we're going to get. But those are the challenges that we have, Anthony. I think it's yeah.
Well, listen, always good catching up with you. And hopefully we have you on next and we get some sort of announcement. You mentioned there's a guy by the name of President Donald Trump that's pretty much running the federal government right now. And let's face it, that's where we need some direction and feedback on really the domino effect it has for both industries right now. But hopefully, from what we see and hear, that things look favorable as far as how things have progressed with rescheduling, but it's just a matter of when they makes sense timing wise. I don't know if that is indeed the case, but hopefully something gets announced soon, but no one knows at this point.
I remain optimistic on that. I remain very optimistic that President Trump is going to do what he said he was going to do.
I agree.
He's continued to say that. I am optimistic by the increasing number of Republicans publishing op-eds saying that cannabis should be rescheduled to 3.
Agreed.
I think that's a strong signal. I know that there is a lot of chatter about additional things happening, and I'm not so confident of that. I really do believe we'll get to rescheduling. As to greater things, I think we'll just have to see how things play out.
Agreed. All right, my friend. Good seeing you.
Thank you for having me on. It's really nice to have the conversation with you all.
Yes. Thanks again, Eric. Always great checking in with you. Okay.
Yeah. Take care. Bye-bye.
Talk soon.
Eric Berlin from Dentons, considered one of the, if not the most respected attorney in cannabis across the U.S. But good dialogue there. And I know the next guest has been foaming at the mouth to get in here. So let's not delay any moment. Let's bring in former hedge fund manager and short seller Marc Cohodes back to the podcast. And we're hoping that you could be a little bit more upfront and blunt in today's live stream versus in the past where you kind of like just beat around the bush. But good to see you. How are things, my friend?
Living the dream. Things are good out in Montana.
Yeah.
Been busy. This is a 24/7, 365 operation and getting the ball over the line.
Yeah, I bet.
I liked your guest. I think he's a
good guy.
He's a good guy.
Listen, lots to get into here today. I want to begin, I know a lot of people right now are just like, oh, like there was this rumor that there could be an announcement before Labor Day. And I know this industry now, it's September 24th. President Trump said we should have a decision soon back on August 11th in a few weeks. That's now 6 weeks ago. Now people are starting to get what people do in this space is broken promises. They fear doubt. How are you viewing this whole process right now? Because I know, like, I look at, there's a lot of things that are happening, but that you got to read between the lines. Like Attorney General Pam Bondi going to Chicago and seizing 600,000 illegal vapes. Like, it's like we're doing this law and order approach. And if they do rescheduling and they talk about the Mexican and these Chinese drug cartels, they have to have some substance behind a lot of this. But do you not look at this as they're trying to build a narrative here? And now it's just a matter of if, not when.
Yeah, I mean, if it wasn't for the unfortunate Charlie Kirk thing, I think it would have happened by now.
You do?
Yeah. I mean, the sense I get, and I'm not a kiss and tell guy, and I'm not dropping names. The sense I get is all the diehard Republicans in the past 10 days have said the number one priority is how to eliminate or doing the Democrats. If Trump deschedules cannabis, which is where I think it's going to go, I'm in the minority here. Everyone thinks reschedule. I think reschedule could be a first step into the deschedule. It's sort of, you got around first base to get to second base when you hit a double.
Great.
I think it's a full deschedule. I think where everyone is missing it, including, your guest, who's a really smart guy, is it's a one plant solution, gang. It's one plant. And this plant is legal in 41 of the 50 states. It polls at 91% favorable. And I'll just simply say this, because everyone's messing around with people in the House, people in the Senate. Life in 2025 begins and ends with leadership, and today the leadership is President Donald Trump. I call him the king, and we live in a kingdom. One decision, descheduling or rescheduling cannabis, has the power to reshape American politics, our economy, and our future. Polls show 91% of voters favor reform. This is not a partisan issue. It's an American issue. If President Trump leads on this, it will destroy the Democratic Party's monopoly on progressive issues and ideas, and the Republican Party will be the voice of the American people. It's just cut and dried. That's the way it will be. And all of this back and forth about making...
There's some truth to that, though, Mark. Like, that's what you believe. But for, like, your trips, the people you talk to without naming names, like, is there some substance and momentum behind what
first of all, Treasury, and again, I'm not naming names, is all in on this, because the safe banking aspect of it, putting product on the blockchain, tracing, labeling, banning, that knocks out illicit. Safe banking gets illicit. Putting stuff on the chain from when it's planted to when it's harvested to when it's sold knocks out illicit. And what no one has mentioned other than me is tax the hell out of this at the federal level. Throw a federal excise tax on it. If you don't like THC levels, tax THC progressively. Ban synthetics, age gate it strongly. And that way, you start knocking out the issues. Banning hemp doesn't do anything because it pushes people toward illicit. Trump is blowing boats out of the water, right, in the Caribbean. So clearly he's into illicit. Maltz, when Maltz and I talk, and now he's a DEA guy, and his bread is buttered on the being cute politically, and I'm not. He knows the way things stand is bad because prohibition doesn't work.
Yep.
And prohibition encourages crime and illicit. Maltz is all for just decriminalizing this, putting in simple rules, simple laws, gating this so law enforcement knows how to act.
Yeah.
If you're in Hawaii and you're on some cannabis bust, federally you have no jurisdiction because the state says it's legal. The feds cannot do anything in a state legal environment. So, it
doesn't make sense.
It's messed up. And what I'm asking for and what I need is all parties to sit down, discuss what your issues are, and think instead of talking. Think it through. Big liquor hates hemp and cannabis because it's destroying their business. Liquor distributors love it. Liquor retailers love it. And it's a $70 billion, $80 billion legal market right now. It's not going to go away. And when you try to make it go away, you make illicit stronger, which is the criminal element, which is exactly what Trump's trying to push down.
The demand's not going away, even if you put a ban on.
When you talk about descheduling, so I mean, descheduling is the most common sense thing that could happen. Descheduling is what we all want. But at the same time, when has the federal government ever done something that was that common sense in recent history? And why would you think that they would start with marijuana reform?
Well,
as far as that goes,
you're so right. And what I want to say on it is, I know Reagan, right? I voted for him when I was still in my teens, I think, and I'm 65 now. All I really remember is Mr. Gorbachev tear down the wall.
Right.
Trump has the chance right now to do something that hasn't been done in 50 years. He can say that Democrats have tried, Republicans have tried, but I'm the guy who got it done.
Marc,
And through making it legal and taxing this thing on a federal level, and God forbid, right, the United States starts exporting this to Europe, which I think is a no-brainer, which you get full support on.
Which
right?
we should be doing.
Which should happen, and tax it on the way out. There's no reason the Canadians should have that market. It's an American-grown product. Ship it to Europe. The government picks up 5% on every dollar that leaves this country, and give it back to the farmers. Give it back to the guys who grow hemp. Give it back to people who need aid, because God knows how hard it is to be a farmer. So I think there's so much noise, right? Some people say shouldn't be with kids, shouldn't be with youth. Okay, they're not allowed in casinos. They're not allowed to drink alcohol.
Yeah,
right. So it should be the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Cannabis. That's who should be regulating this. And I think what's going to happen, again, what I think is going to happen is eventually this stuff's going to be sold in all 21 and over establishments, whether it's a 7-Eleven behind the counter or a liquor store or Bevmo or what have you, casinos. Mm-hmm. And the high octane stuff will be sold in the dispensaries, just like high octane wine. I mean, you can buy 95% of the wine at Safeway, but the real fancy stuff is sold at a wine store.
Is that the ideal setup? And that's a question for both of you. Anthony, is that
100%. The MSOs and the state-run cannabis businesses are never going to lobby for anything that eats into the dispensary model. They've just got way too much exposure. That brick and mortar, relegating that brick and mortar out of their footprints would absolutely nuke any of the big MSOs.
Which is why they all tell you that they want to reschedule and not deschedule. They don't give a shit on the plant. They're just looking for their own interest because their business model is over-levered and it's structurally flawed. And that's what
I agree with. I mean, that's a true statement. But
you take that on top of that. Has anyone seen the price of electricity or power costs? Why use the grid to grow cannabis or hemp inefficiently where it can be grown in normal? It's like growing bananas in Iowa. You can do it, but it's cost prohibitive. So everything needs to pivot because people just need to step back and think, because the MSOs will eventually do fine, because when you eliminate illicit, the illicit money will go into legal. Because as came out in Oklahoma, what are they saying? There's 150 billion illicit in Oklahoma. That's
crazy.
Yeah, that number to me was crazy.
Fine, divide it by 10. Okay, it comes from credible people, but just even if you divide it by 10 and say, illicit in Oklahoma of all places is $15 billion.
Correct.
If people just do what I say or suggest or take my platforms, and serious people are seriously considering it, you wipe out illicit, it all goes toward legal cannabis or hemp. It's the same damn thing. And again, if you don't want it in Idaho, illegal.
You don't have to have it.
Problem, right? Gambling is federally legal, but I cannot gamble online in California. Now I can gamble online in Montana, but not California. So that's where this is headed. And if people think it's not heading there, you're dead wrong. And all the stock guys say, hasn't happened yet. How do you time this? When's the sense of it? If you go to DC and you start talking to real guys, the last thing you bring in the conversation is when, because then you look like a goddamn amateur. But they understand how big this is, how big it could be, how important it is to trade the stocks in the United States, how big it is to bank people. And if you're the party in power, you destroy the other side by doing this. You simply destroy them. So it'll be a party of the people.
1987, President Reagan talked about tearing down the Berlin Wall. We're talking about it 40 some years later. Do you think that's, I don't want to say this is part of Trump's legacy, but if he were to make an announcement like this to this magnitude, are we talking about this moment 40 years from now?
Yeah. Like how big is it? You'll be talking about it 60 years from now.
Because you don't agree, Anthony. I see a nod in your head.
No, I'm sorry, but I can't equate cannabis reform to bringing down the Berlin Wall.
It's actually bigger.
Uh,
I mean, it's bigger because crypto, right? I'm not a crypto player, never have
I
been.
am crypto dwarfs cannabis.
Wait a minute.
Like
But the
crypto's done with cannabis should have done years
Fine.
ago.
I agree, but the difference is then when Trump is theatrical and Trump is transactional.
And he's
Transactional.
economically incentivized.
Okay? Exactly. So when Homeland Security says that illicit is 15 times the size of legal, I take that. I think they're right. And that Oklahoma is an example. And if we decide to export this to Europe and around the world, it's actually bigger. And crypto started right with Bitcoin, the whole debate, or Ethereum, or some of that other stuff. But now it's stable coins, it's shit coins, it's Tether, it's exchanges, it's all these various things. And gambling started with legalizing gambling, right? Then it was online gambling. Now it's prediction markets. So there's offshoots of all these things. Now, I'll just throw it out there. Alcohol consumption going in the tank. Alcohol, beverage earnings companies going in the tank. Why? Because more people are using cannabis.
Yeah, you're right.
Imagine if you have
what's happening in Vegas.
Imagine if you have a great tasting non-alcoholic whiskey, bourbon, rum, or tequila that's laced with THC. Okay. Now I'm told in DC by the beverage retailers and beverage distributors, that's the size of that market is in the multiple tens of billions of dollars.
I believe it. I believe that.
Well, so when you start,
but to be honest, with the amount of power and influence that the alcohol lobby has in Washington D.C., it's perplexing to me why they are not taking this football and running down the field with it already.
Well,
because I'd be
will.
buying.
They will.
But why not now? I mean, do they need rescheduling? Because of my business,
they're fighting this tooth and nail.
I mean, which to me doesn't make sense because they're getting that. If I'm a large alcohol company and my market share is going down, and I'm in the CPG business, and there's a CPG that is flourishing, that's eating my lunch, that the market is completely irrational, the company's valuations are just dog shit, and I can go scoop something up that's a prime asset for pennies on the dollar, and then lobby my way into making this market 10x what it is right now by using my generational power within the halls of Washington, I'd be doing that already. Like, I wouldn't be.
If this thing flips, they will be doing it the next day.
I believe it.
So in other words, they're at complete war right now. The people fighting this, movement is big booze and privatized prisons. Those are the people who are fighting this stuff, right? Yeah. And the CCP who kicks in the politicians through lettered corporations. Fine. The second this flips, big booze is going to find partners who can produce, right, THC on a natural level, infuse it in drinks, because people I know, they don't want to drink hard stuff because they don't like getting sick. They don't like waking up with a hangover. They don't like how it makes you feel the next day.
Great.
But if you have a fine tasting Angel's Envy, if you will, that's made by Bacardi, and it's laced with THC, and you're not hungover and you don't throw up and you can drive a car and you're nonviolent, that market is beyond huge. And that's where we're going. Because it started with Bitcoin, and now look where that infrastructure, it's all over the place. And it started with gambling, then online gambling, and now it's predictive markets.
So, Mark, let me ask you this. We look at timing right now. Unfortunately, obviously, the tragic death of Charlie Kirk back on September, I think it was the 10th. You believe that announcement for rescheduling was delayed because of that, obviously, took over the world, especially here in North America, and what happened. But we're now seeing, Anthony, if I'm correct, President Trump is trending strong when it comes to immigration and crime, correct?
The Republicans are trending to the upside in terms of trust over the Democrats. They're up in the economy, immigration, and crime. Immigration and crime, they're up double digits. The economy, they're up single digits.
So if you have all this stuff trending right now, what do you say? Like, what's the message if you had a chance to speak to key people or even the president itself on the timing of all this? Does it make sense for him to come out now? Because as you said before, yes, he's basically stealing the issue from Democrats. Does it make sense right now, knowing that he's already trending strong when it comes, or the Republicans are trending strong? And given, the fact that everything that's happened over the last couple of weeks, does the timing make sense right now?
Yeah, he's not trending that strong. I mean, there's people in his camp. There's people who are not in his camp. There's 800,000 workers who need to be banked. There's taxes the government can make. There's exports that can happen. And it becomes a Jeffrey Epstein, not free speech issue. These guys get hit on free speech. They get hit on all this other stuff. I mean, he can take this issue and own it. He can get the stocks to trade on Robinhood. He can get banking for these companies. He can create and help a huge industry. So if the industry right now is 70, 80 billion and 15 times that, so that's into $1 trillion, right, is illicit. Imagine the conversion from companies who actually do this right. And again, I can go to anybody, like in DC, you go to Treasury and say, why on earth are we letting the Canadians have a monopoly on shipping inferior product to Europe? Why? Just give me a straight face. Why?
You're going to get some pushback there. There's some great product that's being produced as I continue.
Yeah, I wouldn't go as far to say as inferior product. I do think, though, that it should be an even playing field, and the U.S. should be able to export cannabis in biomass to the EU. But I mean, I've walked through millions of square feet of those greenhouses in Canada, and the ones that are exporting heavily to the EU, it's not dirt weed. They're exporting quality product. Granted, we grow just as good. We could probably grow just as good, and we probably grow it for cheaper.
Right? You and I are betting a beer on that. So that's just my opinion. But if I'm a commerce guy in the United States with our so-called trade war with Canada, at a minimum, give the United States producers a shot. I mean, there was an article in the New York Times how people are paying $500 to $600 an ounce for California weed in London. Okay?
They are.
No doubt, right?
And
give them an opportunity to buy it legally from California on an export basis, right?
100%.
That's all I'm saying. And it's just money that the United States government can get in taxes, help United States farmers, if you will, right? Wherever they may be. And as long as it's tested and as long as it's traced, so it's not coming from illicit, why not? It helps out everybody. But the trick is the anti guys, McConnell and Miller and that whole crew. I would just simply say to them, what's your beef? Because whatever your beef is, I can fix. You don't want youth involved? I can fix it. You don't want synthetics involved? Very easy, ban it. So my thing would be anything from the plant, you're good to go. Anything that's not from the plant is a no-go. Anything that's sprayed, no-go. And whether you're in Florida or Texas or wherever you are, show your ID that you're 21, just like if you buy a fifth of Jack Daniels, and then we'll sell it to you. Because otherwise, it's just the straw man. Malt says all these guys who say, oh, in testing of this weed, it causes psychosis. Per Malt, and he's a great guy, all that weed and all the tests is obtained illicitly, and it's all sprayed. There's no control group in these tests that Kevin whatever and that
it's all high potency synthetics. It's
exactly
THCP.
So there's no it's like giving someone 5 gallons of Jack Daniels to drink and say walk a straight line. They can't. And my conclusion is drinking makes you incompetent where you can't walk a straight line. Yeah, at certain doses. So it's all this 1960 KKK old school bullshit that people, Vietnam era stuff that people break out to scare people rather than to say, it's here to stay, gang. It's not going away. So since it's here to stay, how do we make it the best for all concerned? How do we make it safe? And how do we stamp out the criminal element? And the Dentons fellow said safety. I completely agree. Trump wants to stamp out the criminal element, illicit, cartels, CCP. I couldn't agree more. And then you help American business.
Getting back to your original point, this seems like it's all politics right now. You bring up all these stats, numbers, and it all makes sense. But do you not think the ultimate decision here for President Trump to make some sort of reform change will be based on stealing the issue from the Democrats? Like that is front and center right now.
I think it polls so high. I think it's a huge win for him, and he destroys the Democrats. And I think that's a big deal. I think the issue on the top is polling, and this is a huge plus. The issue is destroying the competition. He said at the UN, he hates his enemy, right?
Yeah.
Trump and I have that in common. I hate my enemies, right? I mean, they just fuel my fire. We have that in common. So his handlers isn't the right word. The diehards, you know, the strong MAGA crowd wants to destroy Democrats. This does it in one fell swoop. It also raises money for the government.
Yeah.
It employs people, knocks out I mean, he's bombing boats out of the water in the ocean.
Well,
So
if you didn't,
he's clearly paying attention to illicit.
well,
He mentioned that in his UN speech yesterday, which I thought was kind of crazy.
what's that?
That he was blowing up boats off Venezuela that were headed to the United States.
So he
While addressing
clearly
the UN. Yeah.
he clearly wants to stop it. He clearly wants to stop it. No one gives a rat's ass about McConnell, an 85-year-old guy on his way out. You know, and he's the guy who caused the loophole issues. So very simply, old man, check out. Everyone will make it right. Right? Rand Paul will make it right. Rand Paul speaks with things, but Trump, what he says goes, just flat out. Whether I agree or disagree, it's the world we operate in.
Yeah.
And the sooner everyone figures that out, they realize that he makes the call. So whatever call he makes is going to be the call. Period.
Mark Ronka writes, you guys, yes, it's big for cannabis, but small compared to Trump's other accomplishments. Do you agree with that? Or if it's trending this high, I know we talk about this topic being a fringe issue, and I think it was for quite some time, but I also feel like in a lot of ways, it does have a tremendous amount of attention, and probably the, like I said, if it's trending 90% up.
Well, here's the deal. I agree with the question. If it's a $70 to $80 billion business, I disagree with the question if it turns into $1 trillion business, right? I mean, it's all, you know, when you draft a player in the first round, you can't judge them just by where they drafted them. You have to see what the guy accomplishes. So let's see what this industry does in a descheduling, fully exportable fashion. If we're able to export to other parts of the world,
yeah, I know
it's going to turn into a big deal. But I'm not a historian. I'm just a guy who thinks there's huge opportunity in the space, and I'm trying to right a bunch of wrongs, and we'll see where it goes.
Well, I think it comes down to this too, Mark. You've been saying this for quite some time now, and I think everybody wants to know, like, do you have, like, is there communications that you have that make you believe some of the things that you want done? Like, what can you feed us?
Communications. Let's see. I'm highly confident. I'm highly confident. I think, you know, I suggested to certain companies that they get GMP certification because I think it's a no-brainer that U.S. companies are going to be shipping to Europe in the not too distant future when this happens. I think it's just a no-brainer. It becomes.
Do you believe Donald Trump is going to announce descheduling before rescheduling? Do you believe that?
No, you can't do it like that. You got to hit first base before you hit second. I think Bondi can make
So put it into better terms. You believe that Donald Trump is going to deschedule cannabis during his presidency before 2028 comes?
Yes. I think it's before the midterms.
For the midterms?
Uh-huh.
So
I think it would have happened without the Charlie Kirk tragedy.
Descheduling, not rescheduling.
It's going to come something like this. I've instructed my attorney general to reschedule cannabis, or whatever people want to call it, marijuana, in the federal registry immediately, right? This will also pave the way for the States Act, which I encourage the House and Senate to pass immediately, to make descheduling a reality. And what this will do, ladies and gentlemen, is, I'll create the ATF, we will tax it, and we'll release nonviolent prisoners, who are held for these things immediately. Alice Ruth Johnson, my pardon czar, is 100% for this, and I pardoned Weldon Angelos 2.5 years ago, and he's a great American who was wrongly incarcerated for blah, blah, blah. Okay?
If our completely dysfunctional Congress passes the States 2.0 Act before the midterms, I will literally get on a plane and fly wherever you are and shake your hand.
Good.
If that happens.
I look forward to it.
I hope it does.
I look forward to it.
But that to me is...
I look forward to that.
Okay.
They do what he says. Congress and the Senate does what he says. And I'll tell you this, anyone who's sitting on the fence for midterms, anyone whatever, will say that guy's a man of action. He does exactly what he says. He's made this right. It should never have been illegal in the first place. It's a real industry. So
I agree with everything you're saying.
In a cashless society, right? Everyone wants you to use your credit card or Apple Pay or your phone or what have you, right? In a cashless society, right? The only cash businesses are dispensaries, right? You want to go buy whatever you want to buy of product. You got to show up at the dispensary with cash. And then if you work there,
You don't. You can use a debit card.
California, it's cash. So
I can use a debit card. I can use a debit card any dispensary in Florida. I've done it in New York. I've done it in Illinois.
I don't live in that inbred state of Florida. Okay, I live where normal people live.
I would be very surprised.
I live where
California dispensaries.
I live where normal people operate, not in that state of Florida.
I'd be very surprised if California dispensaries do not have a cashless debit transaction.
Okay, so be that as it may,
back on track.
These places get robbed. People get murdered. They hold large amounts of cash. Everywhere else is cashless. Some restaurants won't even take cash anymore. So, the trick is bringing this industry, which is a real industry. It's not some $100 million Johnny Rocket throwaway. It's a real industry. So it's to make the industry go. It's to hire people. It's to help farmers, right, who are always under the gun. And you simply take the complexity out of it, and you give law enforcement simple metrics to bust people. Not that federally it's illegal, but state legal. What do we do? Well, this is my bust. They didn't do anything wrong. Well, I'm with the DEA. They did. Don't we have bigger problems like fentanyl and meth and things like that?
Mark, can I ask you, why did Treasury and Homeland Security reach out to you? Like, how were you able to meet with them in Washington? That's pretty telling. Can you share that or no?
Weirdly enough, it begins and ends with Canada. So, some people think I'm an authority in Canada, which I happily call Arctic Mexico, which has such problems. It's beyond, and I've been right about the money laundering. I've been right about the CCP takeover. I've been right about, all the garbage. You guys have had guests. That fellow from Maine paints the story about what comes in over the border.
There is tons. I won't get into it. Anthony kind of gave me the yank on the show last week, so I won't get too much into that more. But
let's just say, I think the CCP has its hands in the Canadian cannabis business in a very big way. And I think that's not good for the United States. Kash Patel talks about what a danger Canada is. He says, Kash Patel says, and I think I quote, our issue is not the southern border, it's the northern border.
I did see that.
And if the issue is the northern border, then Canada becomes something. And, they gave me a statistic. They said, if we were to get in a land skirmish, how much ammunition do you think the United States military has?
Right.
How much do you think we have? Give me how much we have.
Like a percentage, a number?
No, days, weeks, months, years. What do you think we got?
6 months.
Okay, we have 2.5 weeks. So it's very easy to take Canada, aka Arctic Mexico, from the north. And I'm not gonna get into thinking, but if you really look at a map of the world and you decide to invade Canada from the north, there's not a lot stopping anybody, right, till they get to the Montana-Canadian border. So Canada is a real risk. So some people in the government and in Canada value what I think of that shithole up there. And so I think there's problems. I think Alberta and Saskatchewan are going to become territories.
Anthony, I told them not to talk bad about anybody's names or companies.
No, you said names or people, but I know
that Canada has its societal problems, but it's not a shithole.
Okay. Go have fun with the people demonstrating in the financial capital of Toronto. Go enjoy yourself. I'm not talking about
societal issues.
Canada has changed. I will
California, Oregon, Washington.
Go, Anthony. I can't wait to meet you. You and I'll go to Vancouver and we will walk down East Hastings. Okay.
I've walked down East Hastings.
Okay.
I've walked down. It's not for me, but
it's right up your alley. It's right up your alley being from Florida.
Okay, but hold on. If you're going to call Canada a shithole, the country of Canada a shithole just because of East Hastings, we've got Skid Row, you've got the Tenderloin in San Francisco, you've got tons of shit in the United States that are just as bad. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, I think you've got a lot of very good points on the problems with Canada, but it's not a shithole. You can't just blanket the entire country.
We got to channel in a little bit here. But yes, I do think Canada has changed quite a bit. And I do think that you do have a valid point about some of the stuff that's going on with the CCP coming into the U.S.
This guy says I'm in Vancouver. It's a shithole, one of the most corrupt countries now. You're exactly right.
I know, Simon. We talk to Simon all the time.
That's fine. Anthony is letting that Florida in him get out.
I've been all over Vancouver. Been to the Okanagan, Whistler. Vancouver's beautiful. I love British Columbia.
Vancouver's great. Toronto's a great city too. Like it's like when you say shithole, it's not Milwaukee. I'm sorry for any Milwaukee followers.
Toronto makes Milwaukee look like Tokyo. So let's get real here, right? I mean, come on, guys. I mean, we're so they, you introduced me as a short seller. I've been involved in a few money laundering adventures, exposing them like FTX and Signature Bank and Wirecard and SBN, the whole thing. So I'm familiar with financial crime. So maybe none of it matters, but that's why I think this industry is just fascinating, because people are not going to know what hit them when the smoke does clear. I mean, if you look at all this AI stuff and quantum computing and all this bullshit, which will never have revenue, yet alone make money, you look at what people pay for those things. I look forward to what's going to happen in cannabis companies. And again, people say, glass house, I'm a glass, I own a ton of glass house, and I think glass house is great. I think they're the best managed the whole thing. They've handled this raid like pros. Kept their head down, their mouth shut. They fixed up whatever needs to be fixed. They take their lumps, and these guys are pissed off, and they're cockdamn strong. And I can't wait to see what comes out of the backside of this, because now I think if ICE were ever knock on the door, they'd roll out the red carpet. They'd say, "Come on in. We're sort of bulletproof," and that hasn't happened with anyone else. And I think they took their hits like men. And I'm proud of those guys.
This is our deep thoughts section with Marc Cohodes here on the Trade to Black on a Wednesday, presented by Dutchie. Good to have everybody on. Bara da Tajuka writes, as a Canadian, I can say the government is extremely corrupt. No question about that.
Move to Florida. It's slightly better.
Okay, this is a wrap for today. But good to know that you met with Treasury and Homeland Security. Bold statements, but I'll leave this question, and I hate asking timeline questions, but I do want to ask it because I know that you're not one to shy away. Do you think we get some sort of reform announcement before the end of the month here?
The end of the month is in 6 days.
What's today?
The 24th.
No.
Do we get an announcement before the end of the year?
By Thanksgiving.
By Thanksgiving?
I think if that Charlie, they're.
How serious do you think, with all due respect, there's a lot more important things, tragic what happened to him. When you look at things from a perspective and how everything's kind of unfolded since then, it took over every single news feed across North America, both on social and traditional media. So I get it. I understand.
The news cycle, whether you're the late Charlie Kirk, Epstein files, freedom of speech, Jimmy Kimmel, whatever global war conflict or whatever is going on, bombing boats. And there's a lot going on. This is not a ho-de-do thing. And I'd be lying to you, and that's not my MO, if I said I knew. I don't know. And the only one who knows what's in his head is him.
Yeah.
So I think a decision is essentially made, but it's when and how it looks at and how bulletproof they want to make it. But I do think this hemp prohibition that goes on is going to fail. And I think it fails like it failed in Texas, that everyone thought it was going to happen. Because I think people close to him go to the powers that be and said, you guys are going to look mighty stupid mighty soon.
Yeah.
And you can't take away from people something that they already have.
Yeah, good point.
When it becomes this big, this is not a society where people do well with takeaways. They're not going to take away people's guns. They're not going to take away people's money. They're not going to take away people's liquor. They're not going to take away their cannabis or their hemp, especially with it well known that the backside of this all goes toward illicit.
Yeah.
Okay. It's not like it goes to the Reverend Mary. It goes to the worst of the worst. And he's transactional. He's theatrical. I give him a lot of credit for moving it. And he just doesn't give a rat's ass of what I think you guys think and the average person thinks. He's going to do what he wants to do. And I think this is something he will be known for.
Yeah.
And you guys will become the biggest thing ever. So, and again, I give you a whole lot of credit for fighting through all this bullshit that goes on.
Yeah.
And I give that the guys who run that MSOs credit. It's not an easy job.
Yeah.
You can never make anyone happy.
Oh, but that's
it's a bitch.
Rose Overdose writes, just a reminder, Marc Cohodes, he said before September, the last time he was on the show.
That's right. No doubt about it. But look, I'm not a bashful, I'm not a shy person. I use my own name, unlike that clown Dank Informer. If that guy has something to say,
names.
Wait a minute. He's
done great work.
We don't know his name. We don't know who he is.
Yeah, but he does he does quality.
He's phenomenal.
Okay, no shit. You know who you are?
That's a wrap here in today's Trade to Black.
Anthony Varrell, and you're Shad Dales, and you guys put it out there, right? And if you're gonna be opinionated in this world or this space, use your own name. He does great work. Okay, he does great work. But if he wants to be taken seriously by more than a handful of these people, use your own name, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
I
Doug
think
Cass
they-
uses his own name. Todd Harrison uses his own name. Even Kovler uses his own name.
So I would argue that the level of content and what he's actually producing is much
Phenomenal.
more controversial and much more put yourself in harm's way than anything that Todd Harrison, Doug Cass, myself, Shad. I mean, he's had people actively try to dox him through phishing scams. Like he's toting a very thin line in terms of things where people would try to harm you in real life.
People who matter know who he is, believe me. So I'm gonna let him play his.
I just don't think he's a clown. I respect his work. I think he's made progress.
Clown, I like people who use their own name with controversial subjects. That's all.
Yeah,
I
can respect that.
This
But
gonna,
I also respect what he does.
That's all I'm trying to say. And
I'm sure this is going to leak over to Twitter now, so let the Twitter wars begin. But anyway, that's a wrap here today. OGI potentially coming on Friday. We'll keep you guys all posted. Big Mike from Advanced Nutrients is going to come on as well. So, yeah, should be another great show. Mark is awesome. Fun show today. Yes, it was, everybody.
Yeah, it's a great conversation.
You also had a good take. Everybody wants to see some premium content. Feel free to log on and subscribe to our TDR Plus. You had a great takeaway on GTI last night, right, Anthony?
Yeah. It was nice to dive into some of the material things that have happened with GTI in the last couple of weeks. Yeah.
Anthony Cogdiglio, good to see you, my friend. Nice job today. Yes, it was. Mark, you did good, buddy. You did good. And let's keep in touch.
I'll do good when Trump reschedules and says he wants to deschedule and he needs Congress and the Senate to do it. And I want him. They'll take up my excise tax deal, and I want to open up Europe. Then I will have done good. Until then, it's all nothing.
Well, if we get that announcement that you said before midterms of descheduling, I'm not going to fly to your house. I'm going to just drive across the country and just live stream different states. And then
Greyhound does a good job from Arctic Mexico to wherever I live. You can always that Greyhound will do a bang up job for you.
Oh, I think of the movie Planes, Trains, and Automobiles in the late 80s. Good old.
I can send you a Greyhound ticket. You can go over that Ambassador Bridge and you just tell the driver head west and step on the gas.
So what's today? The 24th. I should get there just in time if I'm on Greyhound, right?
Don't sleep on a non-alcoholic alcohol laced with THC that really tastes good.
All right. Good to know.
Don't sleep on that one.
All right, Mr. Cohodes, AV, good stuff here today. Everybody, we'll see you back here Friday at 11. Leave your comments below. Love to get your feedback as usual. Make sure to subscribe to our daily baked-in newsletter. And as well, make sure, like I said, Friday, 11 a.m., latest Trade to Black with OGI and Big Mike coming up. Thanks again, everybody. Today's Trade to Black presented by Dutchie. Thank you. So, what'd you think of all that information? Some interesting stuff that we just learned once again here at the TDR Trade to Black podcast. Let's keep the conversation going. So leave your comments below. We'd love to get your feedback. As usual, if you have time, make sure to like, subscribe, and smash on that bell for all notifications. And stay connected with us here at the Trade to Black podcast. Thanks for watching, everyone.